You're listening to the Paranormal UK Radio Network, and now it's time for the Paranormal Peep Show.
Hi folks, you're listening to the Paranormal Peep Show with myself, Neil Geddes Ward. Actually, it's just Neil Ward, and my little pussycat here. And Happy New Year from everyone, basically.
Happy New Year. I think you're going to have to hold up your pussycat to replace Ben, who's not showing up on his screen at the minute, Andy.
Okay. Yeah, we're going to have the cat.
Yeah.
Am I seriously being upstaged by a cat now? Oh,
You
dear.
are.
You think so bad, aren't they?
It's the cat from outer space. Yeah. So,
Yeah,
happy New Year, everybody. How is everyone?
Happy New Year. Happy New Year.
Well, it's the country is in disarray, and we've still got communism, unfortunately. So we're going to have to find a way of getting rid of that quite quickly. Another year of communism, yay.
The country is always in disarray. I've never known it to be in perfect array or perfect alignment, and everything's tickety-boo. It's
yeah. It's gone from kind of like the useless years of the Tories to the catastrophic years of Labour.
It's gone a lot quicker as well.
Mm.
How are you, Ben?
Well, yeah, I agree with Andy. I mean, it's we could rant for ages about the state of the country. As it is, I'm just getting over a cold. Luckily, it wasn't a long-lasting one. But if I cough a few times, that's why. It wasn't as bad as one of my usual type 3 colds. But I'm also completely invisible because Zoom doesn't like me. It doesn't, no matter what I do, change webcam, change USB port, change everything I like, change settings. It just doesn't like me.
Someone's infiltrated your computer and is censoring your image now. You're becoming
There can be no other explanation. There can be no other explanation. Yeah, but it's great to be back. Despite that, it's great to be back on the show, guys. It really is. Cool. Good to see you again.
Yeah. So, Ben, we was going to have a slightly different topic of discussion, but now we've rearranged it. But you very kindly stepped in because you've been tracking this mysterious object that most people are calling a comet, going through our solar system, and it's been going through since about mid-July 2025. It was discovered, I believe, but it's called
July the 1st. July the 1st.
July the 1st. Three-Eye Atlas. Is that right? It's called that?
That's correct. It's actually a 3-Eye Atlas is registered as a comet on every database in astronomy. It's actually supposedly a comet. Now, on one level, that makes sense because it has comet-like features, but there are several reasons for questioning that, I'd say, and maybe asking yourself whether or not there may be there may be something else going on here. There's several reasons for that. Firstly, comets, almost all of them, literally all of them, apart from one other exception, are orbits. They're in orbit around the sun. Like the planets, they orbit the sun. They are, in fact, an unusual kind of planet that comes from a lot. They come from a lot further away. They come from something called the Oort cloud, which is like basically a huge collection of objects that stretches a long, long way out into space from around the Earth, from around the sun. The Earth is comparatively very, very close to the sun compared to most of the objects in the solar system. Even the planets we know about are actually are really much, much closer. 3-Eye Atlas. So comets come from much further away, and so when 3-Eye Atlas first appeared and it had comet-like features, everyone thought this was a comet. But then they measured its trajectory, its velocity, its direction, and they realized it actually comes from interstellar space.
What?
So it is an interstellar object that does not come from anywhere. So I'm fiddling with my notes here. Sorry. Can I start that bit again?
Yeah. So I'll ask Andy a question. Just whilst you're getting ready, Ben. So, Andy, you must have heard of this 3-Eye Atlas, and what's your thoughts on it before Ben proceeds?
Yes, I've heard of it. It's very intriguing. What I would say is it's becoming really difficult to differentiate sorting the wheat from the chaff. So there's a lot of, I mean, you know this, but Ben and Neil, there's a lot of kind of like fake news, and there's a lot of like what I would call just nonsense articles. Why they exist,
Oh
I
yeah.
don't know, but they do exist. There's some articles claiming that it's been blown up, that missiles have been fired to it, and it's been. I don't believe that. Why these articles exist, I don't know. So it's actually quite difficult to work out what is true and what is like just nonsense news.
Yeah.
There's a few reports that it's changed color from a blue to a green. There's a few reports that it's changed direction, so it's gone in one direction and the trajectory's changed. There's other reports saying that structures have been seen on it. There's other reports saying that like there's little objects around it, kind of like either orbiting it or kind of like clustering around it. How do we know what's real? And then we can't even trust NASA, because as we know, NASA stands for never a straight answer. And apparently they've been blocking information or censoring information. The mainstream media barely covers it, so you do get things from like Independent, Daily Mail, that kind of thing, Telegraph. They've covered a bit of it, but we've not seen it on anything like BBC News or ITV News or even GB News. Of all the news stations, I would have thought GB News might cover it, but they haven't. So how do we know who's telling the truth, and how do we know what's just nonsense news and what's real news on this? It's incredibly difficult.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I was sort of disappointed in GB News because they covered in the UFO. They've been covering the UFO thing. Um, yeah, there is a whole load of. There's almost a cottage industry now of social media creators who put up these posts, and usually they're very sophisticated with good graphics. There's some videos with really sophisticated AI voices saying exactly what you said, Neil, Andy. A whole array of claims made about 3i Atlas. Now, the irony is some of them are true and some of them are false. But the way I think there's various ways of sorting out the wheat from the chaff, but it's not actually. It hasn't struck Mars. It hasn't been blown up. There are no things hanging around it. There are no structures on it. No one can see close enough. But it is changing course, and it is changing color. Now, this is the interesting thing. And there's the list of anomalies are amazing. First of all, it is interstellar. It has a retrograde trajectory, which means it's actually entering the solar system from the other side of the solar system than you'd expect if it was in line with the planets. The planets orbit. If you're looking at the solar system from, say, the celestial North Pole, the planets all orbit anti-clockwise. 3i Atlas is therefore approaching from the left-hand side if you're looking downwards from the celestial North Pole. I mean, it's also, strangely enough, it's actually within 5 degrees of the plane of the ecliptic. And it's zodiacal. It's a zodiacal object. Now, this is the first time ever we've experienced a zodiacal object. That means it is basically if this planets around the sun don't orbit randomly, they orbit within a specific disk of space, which is roughly it's basically from the sun to the outer planets is roughly 5 degrees of the celestial sphere. And amazingly, 3i Atlas is within that ecliptic. Now, that is the likelihood of that happening randomly is 0.2%. There's more, though. There's more. It also is, strangely enough, its arrival time appears to be almost fine-tuned. It is coming. This is really, really weird. It's coming really close to all the inner planets. With one exception, Earth. So, I mean, it's traveling with. It is traveling. I think with a 0.2 astronomical units of Venus, 1.2 of Mars. This is an astronomical unit is the average distance between the Earth and the Sun. It's 0.6 with Jupiter. With Earth, it's literally on the opposite side of the solar system. I mean, if only it turned up 6 months earlier or 6 months later, we'd have a ringside seat. Instead, we're in the worst possible place to observe this object. And I do wonder if that is actually, I do actually wonder if that is actually deliberate, or is it accidental? Is it just bad luck? Again, the chances of that happening are even greater, even minute.
No. What's the age of this thing, though? They've been talking about they think it's been traveling in space for like 5 billion years or something. This is the
if it is natural, it comes from what's called as the thin disk of the Milky Way galaxy. This is a collection of the Milky Way consists of several zones. If you look at it, it's like a spiral galaxy. And there's the spiral arms, there's the hub, there's the core, the hub. Within the spiral arms, there's several populations of stars of various ages. The Earth is in what's known as the thick disk, where you have newer second-generation stars that emerge from explosions, nova and supernova explosions from the earlier stars in the galaxy. But there is there's a thin disk of very old, long-living stars within the spiral arm. And it's from here. If we assume 3i Atlas is natural and it's always been on the same course and velocity, then it comes from there, which means it must be between 5 and 7 billion years old. This will make it the oldest object we've ever seen by a long way. In fact, it's considerably older than the solar system. Much, much older than the solar system itself. If it is a natural object, this might explain some of the strange chemistry, because the chemistry is all over the place. I mean, it's totally different from any other comet in terms of it's got far less water than it should have in it. It's got nickel in it, like pure nickel. Now, pure nickel is never seen in nature, because nickel forms naturally in an alloy with iron. And now, to actually extract pure nickel from the iron is actually an industrial process. It's only been done for a few centuries by humans on Earth. There's no known natural process that separates nickel from iron. If such a natural process exists, we don't know what it is. But there's no doubt that pure nickel vapor is coming out of this particular object, which is rather strange indeed. Only 4% water in the gas plume. That's strange. That's very, very strange indeed. It has changed color, like we said, and there are the direction of the plumes of material coming out. They look like a comet. They do look cometary on the superficially. But if you actually look at the details, there's something wrong with them. For example, we all know comets have several tails that point away from the sun. Basically, the solar wind blows them away. Now, 3i Atlas has several tails on it, and they go in all directions. Some of them go towards the sun. This is extremely rare. Less than 3% of comets have anti-tails, as they're called, and they tend to be very small, considerably smaller than the tail itself. 3i Atlas's anti-tail is, I think, 15 million miles long, which means that the pressure of the jet that's causing it must be enormous, because it has to counter solar wind. There's also really strangest of all, there's a couple of tails that go perpendicular to the sun. Now, this is really, really strange. That's never been seen before, and no one knows what's causing it. What kind of pressure would be needed? I mean, Avi Loeb, who is the go-to guy on this, I'll tell you, his blog, Medium, is the one-stop shop for everything you want to know about this particular object.
He's the Harvard astronomer, is that correct?
Yeah, he's a very, very senior figure, actually. He's not just some, lab monkey in some basement in some university or some red brick university. He is he's the Baird Professor of Astronomy and Astrophysics at Harvard University, meaning he's one of the most senior astronomical experts in the world, and he's very widely respected. He's been widely published for all his life. He's almost 60 now, and he's got a very, very big career. So has a hell of a lot to lose in terms of reputation by making this up, or even making an honest mistake about this. He has everything to gain simply from saying, well, I was wrong about all this and I retract it. And he has never done so. He's very bravely stood up, even when people have been calling him all kinds of names. It's really quite extraordinary. And he's and it's not the first time Avi Loeb has come into the realms of the woosphere. I mean, he's the guy who first started talking about Oumuamua possibly being artificial. Yeah, this is what's really, really strange. And
what's his take on it? Like, has he actually mentioned aliens, UFO, extraterrestrial?
Yeah. Very bravely, he has, and in doing so, he's come up with something he calls the Loeb scale, which is the possibility that it might be artificial. He gives it a 4 out of 10 on that scale, which is really high. I mean, it takes on, if you look at how he breaks it down, he's pretty. It's pretty likely that this is the natural explanations do not make sense. It's quite likely that this is an artificial object, in my view, and in his view as well. He's obviously been cautious. He has to be cautious in his position. He can't go out on a limb like I do, who has nothing to lose by whatever I say. But Avi is saying he's got a 4 out of 10 chance this is an artificial object. And the weirdest thing of all is it's exhibiting a non-gravitational acceleration. And this is something that he actually predicted would happen. Avi predicted that this would happen once the object approached perihelion. Perihelion is the closest point of approach to the sun, where firstly, it can actually use the sun's gravity to assist in what's known as a reverse O-berth maneuver, so it's basically using the sun's gravity to assist with propulsion and to course change. It's rather like the tides of the sea, how a ship will use the tides of the sea to help it move from one place to another. And secondly, it's out of sight of the Earth. It was very difficult to observe from the Earth at that point. And so if it wanted to hide what it was doing from us, that would be the time to do it. So it has actually exhibited non-gravitational acceleration. Not a lot, only a small amount. In fact, but this is what's really weird. It's the perfect amount that would bring it into orbit of Jupiter when it actually reaches Jupiter on the 16th of March. It's in the perfect direction to hit what's known as the Hill radius. This is the point which is known as the Lagrange point, which is basically where the gravity of the Sun and Jupiter cancel each other out, which means that it's essentially like a convenient parking space in space, a parking spot in space to put your car. It's just the perfect place. It's like a little garage you can park in.
What was the date that it was closest to Earth?
It was on the 19th of December, so it's just the end of last year. Neil, sorry, mate, but there could be up. Could we record an update, because there may be news.
This is this, and we could have a full-fledged alien invasion.
Yeah, we can record updates closer to the time when it's going to depart this mortal coil of Earth sphere or solar system.
So this is extraordinary. I mean, what it means is that it could be that this object is trying to rendezvous with, maybe there are already alien bases in the vicinity of Jupiter. It's a perfect place if you are visiting. This is what we would do if we went to another solar system. Indeed, this is what is often portrayed in science fiction and has been speculated by people designing interstellar missions. We would set up a place where there's plenty of resources, and Jupiter has it all. It has fuel. It has a lot of heat coming off the planet itself. It has metals, it has chemicals of all kinds, and it is a significant distance from the Earth. In fact, it's going to be very hard to observe when it actually reaches that particular location, especially if it stops outgassing, if that's what it's doing. You see, what I think, and I mean, Avi's mentioned this, is it possible it actually looks like a comet because they're trying to disguise it? They've just kind of put on a camouflage of a comet because they know that we will see it. They can't hide themselves from us, and they want this spacecraft to look like a comet. And it hasn't worked. Obviously, they've underestimated us. However, this could be what they've kind of done, what their objective was to be. So that's it. These are all interesting questions. I don't have any firm answers. We don't know for sure, but this is really, every time I look at this, every time anyone looks at it, it's getting weirder and weirder and weirder.
And what was the NASA kind of gave a very arbitrary kind of review of it, didn't they, when they did their own live stream thing about it?
They did a press conference, which was extraordinarily bad, even by their standards. This was bad. They had a panel of 4 or 5 experts that did an hour-long presentation. In the very first minute, they got some guy. It was his only contribution, actually, the only time he spoke. He's the deputy director. I can't remember his name. It's an Indian-type name. He's Indian, not Amerindian. And he just said, I think we should clear this up from the start. I'm paraphrasing now. I think we should clear this up from the start. 3i Atlas is a comet. You may have heard from some people, whose names we won't mention, elsewhere, that this might be some kind of spaceship, but let me reassure you, it's not. It looks like a comet. It behaves like a comet. Therefore, we have to conclude it's a comet. And that there are rational explanations for all of the anomalies that have been observed, things like that. It was pathetic. There were some other panelists who simply agreed with the first one, gave a load of technical details. Then there was a Q&A session from selected members of the press. You can bet that Avi Loeb was trying to call in, and then the switchboard said kept like switching him off. And it was really awful. It was really, really bad. And
if it was just an ordinary comet, as they're claiming, why do a whole live stream about it and a big press announcement? It's like they're trying to say, don't look at this, folks. It's just a comet. Don't look at this. And by actually doing this big press announcement, everyone's kind of thinking, what comet? And they start to look into it more.
That's what I think they were getting a bit desperate, actually, especially with the government shutdown. over in the States. As you know, the Congress has actually done a government shutdown, which is annoying. It's when they can't agree to a budget. So basically everything closes down except emergency stuff like hospitals and things like that, and transport. At NASA was one of the things that's not considered emergency, so they just shut it down. But this happened to coincide with 3i Atlas's closest point of approach to Mars, when the high-rise camera on the Mars Global Surveyor managed to get some really close, as close as we're ever going to get, photographs of 3i Atlas. And those were then transmitted to Earth, and then NASA said, sorry, we can't show you to them because, everyone's been furloughed. All our staff are at home. They've just been kicked out. There's a lockout, because of the government shutdown. And so when that thing, they decided, because everyone was saying, now, come on a minute, what's going on here? This is a bit suspicious, isn't it? This is a bit convenient. So they decided to break their silence in style with some big reveal. But you know what? The photo they showed was actually was nowhere near as good as some of the stuff that people are getting from amateur telescopes from TNU. I mean, so, for example, Dobsonian Power, he's a Portuguese astronomer who's been studying this in great detail. He's been getting better pictures than that from his back garden. And he really, really has. And I suspect what they wanted to do was simply do a bit of photoshopping. And you know why I know this? Because months ago, Avi predicted, he said that the high-rise camera it was by far the best camera in orbit around Mars. There's a couple of others, such as the one on the Tianwen-1 orbiter, which is a Chinese probe, which is very similar, but it's not quite as good. Even though it's slightly closer, it didn't get as good as an image. But the high-rise camera, he said that the range of 3i Atlas, the resolution would be 30 kilometers per pixel, which is actually pretty good, because he said then we'd find out exactly how big the object is. The nucleus, the actual object itself, the solid object that produces all of the coma and the tails. How big is it? Because if we know how big it is, it will answer a lot of questions. So, for example, the problem is if it turns out to be too small, NASA then have a problem, because before 3i Atlas hit perihelion, got close to the sun and started this non-gravitational acceleration, there should have been some outgassing propelled. There should have been like some the rocket effect from the outgassing early on, which didn't happen. The only explanation for that is that 3i Atlas is too big for that, but it's happening. In other words, it's a much larger object, possibly between 15 and 30 kilometers plus across, or it may be much smaller. But if it's much smaller, then they're going to have to explain how it has such little mass, yet it's not reacting to its own thrust effect of the outgassing. And NASA would have to conclude that it has some other mechanism for keeping it on a course. In other words, it's dirigible. Now, the only objects that are dirigible in space in that form are artificial spacecraft. So what the hell? So NASA were in a real pickle. I think this is why they were probably sitting around in dark rooms, like smoking themselves to death, thinking, how the hell are we going to do? We can't get away with this much longer, but we're going to have to somehow go public with this in a way they won't suspect. So they get this really silly press conference. I was actually away at the time at this hotel. I managed to watch all of it. By the time I finished, I wished I hadn't, but there you go. I was
going to say, what we'll do now, we'll just take a quick break here on the Paranormal Peep Show. And so we'll come back for a part 2. We'll be talking to Ben and Andy, and I'll be hosting as well, talking about this Atlas 3i comet, spaceship, asteroid, dirigible, whatever you want to call it. So we'll resume in just a minute. See you then. Welcome back to the Paranormal Peep Show Part 2, and now we're getting a crash course on the strange object hurtling through our solar system, which is called 3i Atlas. Ben, one of the questions that has been coming up in a lot of things I've been seeing is, what is the 3i meaning?
It means this. I is the designation used by the International Astronomical Union for interstellar objects, and 3 means it's the third one, because this is actually something quite new. According to the IAU. According to the IAU, the only interstellar object we've ever had before, the first one was in 2017, which was Oumuamua, which we've discussed on previous shows. The second one came 2 years later in 2019. It was called Borisov, named after a Russian astronomer that discovered it. So it was called 2I Borisov, the second interstellar object, named after the astronomer who discovered it. And it was a comet, basically. It was a fairly normal comet that must have come from a solar system or a star system very similar to our solar system, because it was about as boring as interstellar objects get, basically. And everyone thought, well, maybe that's it. Maybe Oumuamua was our only anomaly. And they started saying, oh, boo-hoo, we've just missed our only chance at something really weird. But that lament has fortunately proven itself to be very premature, because then just a few years later, we get 3i Atlas. Now, the reason it's called Atlas, it was discovered by the Atlas Network, which was the alert it's something to do with, it's a network of telescopes that cover the southern hemisphere, which are designed to spot asteroids. These may possibly be ones that are dangerous to Earth, that might impact the Earth, like the one at Chelyabinsk, which caused a huge explosion and shattered windows and injured a number of people, or possibly even worse if it's a bigger one going faster. Now, the principal tool is what's called the Vera C. Rubin Observatory, which is in Chile, South America. It's high up on a mountain, and it is very, very sophisticated. It's possible that some of these objects, not unlike Oumuamua, would not have been spotted if it wasn't for advances in technology like this. But the Atlas Network spotted 3i Atlas on the 1st of July. They actually went through some historical plates of previous photographs that were taken of the sky, and it was actually discovered, it was actually visible on those plates as early as the middle of May. However, no one actually recognized it at the time, and it was only observed, it was only designated, it was actually said, this is definitely exists. It was spotted by someone on the 1st of July. So it's very fast as well. It's currently traveling at 68 kilometers per second, which means it's not only the oldest object, but the fastest object we've ever seen. And it's so fast, it was discovered in, as I say, early July, which is crossing the orbit of Jupiter. It's going to go straight across the inner solar system and meet the orbit of Jupiter again on the other side on the 16th of March, which is incredible. It's traversed the entire inner solar system in less than a year. So it's extraordinarily fast.
At what point will it be the furthest, well, not furthest away, what point will it exit us being able to see it, and it being the crunch point of whether it's a UFO that wants to make contact, or whether it really is just a comet that's just going to disappear into space forever?
How long it will take is unknown. It depends on the sensitivity of the instruments and the properties of the object itself. In other words, does it maintain its brightness? And one of the anomalies of the object is it's far brighter than we were expecting it to be. It's far brighter than any comet should be, and its brightness fluctuates, which is really weird. And it increased enormously when it shouldn't have, and it decreased again. It's really strange thing that's going on. But it is going to get harder to observe the further it goes away. And once it gets close to Jupiter, only the most sensitive instruments can actually detect it. But how will we know whether or not it's alien or not? Well, whether it's a UFO or whether it's just a natural object, it depends what it does. Obviously, if it stops and comes and approaches us and starts sending us radio signals, that's a bit of a giveaway, isn't it?
Actually, haven't they already said that there are radio signals coming from it?
Well, there was it was actually a silly news story. They said, it was one of these crazy social media posts. Atlas transmits radio signals. All it was doing, it was actually simply radiating on a chemical level. Some of the chemistry in it was actually radiating. And this was detected by an Earth. I can't remember the details, but it was detected by an Earth instrument. That's all it was. But obviously, if it starts sending organized radio signals to the Earth, if it changes direction considerably, and you could argue that that's already happened, actually. But if, for example, it completely does a 180 and starts coming back, then no one can pretend that's anything else. But the non-gravitational acceleration that's already happened is inexplicable.
Didn't it come from the area? They suggest it's come from the area the WOW signal came from. That was in 1977.
It is close to that. Now, it all depends on whether it's been on the same course and velocity for all this time, because you can actually work it out, because it is actually quite close. It's in the constellation of Sagittarius. Roughly, it was first observed roughly 9 degrees away from where the WOW signal came from. Now, that's when it was first observed. Now, we don't know exactly where the WOW signal came from in terms of its range. So we don't know if it was very, very close or a long way off. So we don't know exactly whether it came from. We know that, of course, if you use triangulation, you just you use the trigonometry to work it out. When the WOW signal happened, which was on August the 14th, 1977, we know where 3i Atlas would have been if it was on the same course and trajectory that it's on currently. So if it had just been traveling in a straight line all this time, we know where it would have been. And so you can do some trigonometry. But when you do, you work out that it's actually roughly 9 billion miles away from where the WOW signal appeared, if the WOW signal emerged at the same range as 3i Atlas. So, I mean, some people have put this down as significant. There's no way of knowing for sure exactly how, there's no way of knowing exactly how far away the WOW signal was. So, I mean, it's a bit tenuous to say that's where the WOW signal came from.
Yes.
Unless, of course, 3i Atlas changed course in that time. And when the WOW signal happened, 3i Atlas was at the point where it came from.
Yeah.
In which case, it could be the source.
We should explain, really, to those that don't know what we're talking about. The WOW signal was a signal that they picked up at, like you say, in 1977 at this observatory.
Yeah.
And to the layman, it was just a series of numbers on a piece of paper in a printout that the guy was like checking the next day or something. But
Yes, Jerry Elner.
yeah, he worked out from this series of numbers that it almost seemed like artificial signal being transmitted, and that's why he wrote "wow" just above it.
Exactly. Yes, it was so strange. I mean, this was at the Big Ear Observatory, which is at somewhere in Ohio, USA. I can't remember exactly where, but there's this thing called the Big Ear Radio Observatory, and on the 14th of August 1977, it was doing its normal thing. Now at night time, it's actually completely automated. There's just a computer that runs everything, and it gathers all the data and it prints it out on these big long sheets of paper that computers used to use before they became more sophisticated. And the guy just gathered it up and then put it in his inbox. And when Jerry Elner has started flicking through it, he came across, like you say, it doesn't mean much if you don't know about radio astronomy, but it actually, what it indicates is that the signal was getting stronger and stronger, doubling, tripling in strength continuously over a period of several minutes, and then diminished again. And he wrote the word "wow" because he was astonished by this. And we know more or less where it came from. There's two spots where it might have came from, depending on the antenna, because they couldn't quite work out exactly which antenna picked it up. But what the weird thing was, it was roughly where Carl Sagan and Frank Drake and several other people had predicted that the aliens would actually transmit. It was the frequency they predicted the aliens would transmit at, which is like the vibration of protium, in other words, hydrogen at its lowest form of energy. And they said, well, the aliens would use that particular frequency because that's the most obvious one. Now, I don't know. I don't know if that's actually true, because I mean, they may not think like we are. They may. We assume they're going to think like we do, because that's what we would do. We don't know if that's what they would do, because they're aliens. So we don't know. But that's what they was assuming. This was dead on the hydrogen line.
It could have been a warning, like saying, "Whoops, we missed this great big interstellar object floating through our solar system on our cameras. Any chance you guys could get a good photo of it in 2025?"
It could be something like that. Yeah, you never. I mean, it's curious though. The WOW signal it's never repeated. Unfortunately, it's never come back. But it's turned out it's one of several other strange things that have occurred, such as the Lorimer bursts and things like this. There's the gamma ray bursts and stuff. So there's all kinds of these strange things do happen across the solar system from time to time. Things like 3i Atlas are obviously they're a lot more significant because this is something that's actually entered our solar system. Now there's a lot of people talking about are scared of this, and this has frightened some people because they think this is I think one of the reasons NASA are so desperate to sort of pour
Calm the nerves.
pour oil on troubled waters, shall we say? Because they're worried that people might start panicking. Because you know what governments are like; they have such a low opinion of us. They think we're always going to panic.
And Bruce Willis is out as action, so we can't send him a shuttle to sort it out. So
this is.
Isn't there some kind of task force that's been set up and kind of government meetings to address all of this as well?
Yeah, there's been several meetings, and some of them have been held in secret, which is interesting. But there are several organisations now which are attached to the Atlas network, which is specifically designed to look for threats like this. And funnily enough, what's really weird is they originally designated 3i Atlas as potentially a threat. Now, what normally happens when an asteroid is detected, and they think, well, is this heading towards the Earth? Could it hit the Earth and cause damage? And a large asteroid could cause considerable damage actually if it lands in a populated area. it could cause a catastrophe. Yeah, what they do is then that when they work out where it's going, they work out whether or not it's going to actually hit, how likely it is to hit the Earth. And if it sometimes turns out, no, don't worry, it's going to miss. We've worked out it's going to miss. Then they lower they reduce the, what's the word? They reduce the threat level of that particular object on their database. But then the thing about it is, when they worked out the 3i Atlas is going to miss the Earth. In fact, 3i Atlas is missing the Earth by a very, very large margin, as I explained earlier. They should have actually dropped the they should have dropped that object from their database, but they didn't. It's still listed as a potential threat, which doesn't make sense. It does not make sense at all. If, of course, it does radically change course and starts to head to the Earth, there's going to be people who'll say, well, this is like it's actually planning to do something malevolent to us. And indeed, that is something we have to be prepared for, just in case. Indeed, this is the purpose of the military, and they do have contingency plans for this sort of thing. Obviously it's not discussed openly, but there is a kind of like they have discussed this in private. But on the other hand, we don't know we don't know what its intentions will be. I'm personally not worried, simply because I'm sure you guys agree that interstellar objects are here already, and the intelligence behind them, they're already interacting with us.
But this is it. So when people go, oh, well, could this be alien? To me, well, it's probably a very unique form of space rock or something like that. That's, like I say, come from another galaxy or something over 5 billion years. And the normal craft that we discuss on this show and other podcasts talk about, aliens, ETs, coming in UFOs or motherships or something like that, do not take about a 6 months period to cross the solar system. They seem to come wherever in an instant or very quickly. So this is almost like a sailboat in astronomical terms compared to racing cars or something, or Tomcat aircraft, if you want to put it in kind of earthly terms. So it could be an old kind of alien artifact or alien craft or something, Vija probe, if you like, Star Trek, maybe something like that. And it could have come from a time before they managed to get this kind of super faster than light technology and anti-gravity, and it's literally something that's been sent out to monitor different solar systems it passes through and sends data or records it in some way, and it might do a massive U-turn and come back and go back to where it's come from. Who knows?
It's possible. I mean, it may or may not be connected with the UFOs we already see in our skies.
What if it's
may
a massive mothership crammed
could
full
be,
of tiny little ships?
Well, it does make me wonder, is this where they come from? Is this how they travel to us? The only reason we haven't seen them before is because we didn't have telescopes good enough to spot them, and now we do. Which means it could be, if we didn't have good enough telescopes, this could be that 3i Atlas would have passed through, we never noticed it. We certainly wouldn't have spotted a Oumuamua, I don't think, unless the Pan-STARRS observatory was actually running.
What images do you trust of Atlas 3.1? Because is it kind of like a rough type shape? Is it like a smooth shape? Does it look spaceship shaped?
No one knows. No one knows, because it's surrounded by this coma of gas and dust, which is why it has these comet-like features. The ones I trust are by the amateur astronomers, and they're numerous. They're everywhere. Because despite what I just said, this object is clearly, it probably would have been possibly would have been spotted anyway. It's only when people know where it is they can actually find it. It's possible someone would have spotted it anyway with an amateur telescope. And there's really, really great images of it, which really illustrate the really strange tail structure and the outgassing and things like this. And Avi Loeb has calculated that the object would have had to lose nearly all its mass in order to produce these kinds of tails if it were just an outgassing comet. And it's just really, really interesting, because this is just like basic physics, Newton's third law, things like that. And the non-gravitational acceleration can't be explained by that way. It just doesn't make sense. And if it could be that this is actually dropping off a few UFOs, maybe it's visiting one of the bases that the aliens use. Because they're already, as you said, they're already interacting with us. They fly through our skies at night. People see them. They interact with our spacecraft, our aircraft. They sometimes land. They can sometimes come down to ground level. They interact with people. the government know a hell of a lot about them that they're not saying. I don't lose any sleep knowing that that fact exists, even though I'm not a kind of person who just thinks, well, they must all be good guys because they're so intelligent and so highly advanced. They might not be. Indeed, there have been stories where people have had negative experiences with these objects, quite extreme.
Yeah, got to ask the question as well. If they are here for Earth and to interact with human beings, why have they taken a trajectory that's so far away from Earth compared to the rest of the planet?
Yeah, this indicates they actually don't want to. Certainly, they don't want. They're not going to let this mothership get close to us. They seem to. It does feel like they're actively avoiding us.
In which case, why are they here?
I don't know. I mean, they may just be passing through. They may be dropping something off. They may be, leave. They may leave something behind. They may enter the Jovian system and maybe orbit there and maybe set up some kind of establishment on one of the moons of Jupiter.
Now, it's past Jupiter already, and it's going to pass Jupiter again, hasn't it? I thought
sorry. It did pass the orbit of Jupiter. Yes, it did. Indeed, it passed it, I think, last June. And this was shortly before it was discovered. And it's going to pass, not just past the orbit of Jupiter, but pass close to the planet itself, within 0.6 AU on March the 16th. It's going to be very close to Jupiter. There was actually a craft called the Juno probe, which NASA sent up there years ago, which has now completed its mission. Avi has been petitioning to get that probe reassigned and repurposed to investigate 3I Atlas. And NASA have just said, "Oh no, we don't need to bother. It's just a comet." And they want to deorbit the Juno probe into the atmosphere of Jupiter anyway. Despite Anna Paulina Luna, who's like one of the most pro UFO Congress people, and they are NASA are digging their heels in and they're being stubborn about it, and so that means that you think they'd be really, really curious if they really believe this is a natural object. They'd think, "Wow, this is amazing! An interstellar, a natural object of a type we've never seen before. We need to get a better look at it." But they're showing curiosity, so they're scared of what they might see.
They managed to photograph Comet Shoemaker-Levy going into Jupiter in '97 or whenever the year was that it crashed in there. And they looked at it from telescopes on Earth and things like that, which was that Comet Shoemaker-Levy was actually predicted by this blind nun who said it was a punishment from God for all the pornography and sin in the world. I mean, that really got us across the knuckles, that one, didn't it? We really laid low after that one.
Mother Shipton, no Mother Shipton, that was a Russian lady, wasn't it?
Oh yeah,
lady, yeah.
So, but there's lots of crazy people out there that have been saying they've been receiving signals or telepathic messages from Atlas 3I, saying what their intentions are. They're in communications with aliens on board it. And, it does become quite a boggle threshold of, yes, we're open-minded into the paranormal, hence the show. But when these people claim that they're receiving messages from Atlas 3I, you kind of wonder, are they just the same as these people that would commit suicide in some sort of Heaven Gates kind of?
Yeah, I was gonna say that the Halibop Heaven Gates thing. We've got there might be some kind of Atlas 3I cult somewhere that we're not aware of.
Yeah, the Kool-Aid is being prepared now.
Oh god, this is another worry, which is that there are some people who are obviously mentally unhinged, and this is going to have the ontological shock might have a bad effect on them. I'll accept that. And, indeed, the Hale-Bopp comet, which was actually was 1997 as well, and that what happened was the group of people called the Heaven's Gate cult actually did. They had their own ideas about it. This is a very closed community of people. I think there were 37 of them altogether who had this really weird idea. They were led by a guy called Marshall Applewhite, who was a rather strange character. And he gathered together a few followers. And they decided that this was actually fitted into their theology very closely. And they said, well, this is come to collect the worthy from the earth before the apocalypse. There's one problem, though. It could only pick you up if you were already dead. Because your soul needed to be carried up to this craft. So the logic was, well, they need to be dead when this thing reaches the closest point of approach to the earth. So on the day when that happened, they all drank. They all took barbiturates, a huge overdose of barbiturates, lay down on their beds, with their Nike trainers. I mean, talk about product placement. That's the worst product placement imaginable, isn't it? And they sadly passed away. And it's a terrible tragedy. It's a horrific thing to happen. And this is why I do advise people. I always say, please don't lose touch with reality. Whatever happens. If you know somebody who starts saying weird things like this, please do sit them down, talk to them, don't abandon them. Ask them, just try to drag them off the ledge, so to speak. Give them a cup of tea or something.
Maybe we should have an announcement at the end of the show saying, have you been affected by topics in this program? Please call this number.
Do you reckon the last thing Marshall said was just do it?
What? I don't know. He was one of the ones that died. So he believed it himself. He wasn't just fooling people. And it's just... This sort of thing might happen. Yeah, this sort of thing is the kind of thing that some people will do. And no, it doesn't mean I believe it justifies secrecy. It doesn't justify secrecy. It doesn't mean that the majority of people can't cope with this. This is why the government has such a low opinion of us. They think we're kind of panic machines. But it does mean we need to be wary, look after ourselves, look after your neighbours, check they're all right, that kind of thing.
Here's the weird thing, though. How do we know that they're wrong? They could have been right.
Oh yeah. How? Well, I'm willing to take the risk by not ingesting the whatever it was they took. I'll happily go along with that. I can't believe I can't believe that actually would be the case.
That was slightly tongue in cheek, but
we'd have to have a medium communicate with them just to.
Well, this is it, because the thing is, their premise was that they can only join the spaceship if they're dead. Well, we won't know that until
yeah. But it was like there was this medium that was channeling the going slightly off topic, but I suppose it's relevant because we're a paranormal show. But there was a medium that was channeling, I think it was Dick Scobie and the other guy that was the shuttle pilots of the Challenger, along with members of the crew, and they were coming through talking about the O-rings and things like that. And I think the trouble with that was that all this had been reported in the media anyway, that it was the O-rings that destroyed the Challenger. So these people were channeling the various pilots and astronauts on board that craft, and it was interesting, but I don't think it was absolutely true at all, to be honest. That kind of fell off the page as far as the media was concerned. So Ben, if this thing does get to Jupiter and it passes by Jupiter, is it going to be close enough for Jupiter to suck it into its orbit and maybe end the same fate like previous comets and debris in the solar system?
Well, not if it stays on course, no, because it's going to hit the exact correct position. Well, it's interesting, the exact correct position. As I said, the non-gravitational acceleration seems fine-tuned for a perfect insertion into Jovian orbit. Now, that could change, of course. It could either miss Jupiter entirely, or it could literally crash into Jupiter. We don't know yet, but what we've seen so far is indicative of it being dirigible. In other words, it being like a spacecraft that can actually change its course deliberately because of intelligent design. I mean, that's the way it looks so far. This is what it looks like it's going to do at the moment. We'll have to just wait and see. Now, what's interesting is that when Avi first published this, or when the data was first released, it wasn't just Avi talking about this, because everyone was like, when it was discovered, I think Avi was the first one. Him and a colleague actually discovered this strange coincidence that the non-gravitational acceleration was perfect for it to hit straight as an arrow to the Hill radius and the Lagrange point of Jupiter and the Sun. And when literally the day after was that, NASA, strangely enough, decided to break their silence yet again, and so they got their person at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory who did the original NGA calculation to reassess it. So it's now been revised apparently by JPL, by NASA, that 3I actually will not pass into the Hill radius of Jupiter. I mean, it'll pass just inside it. Now, is it a coincidence that this correction was made just after a lot of people were talking about this strange coincidence? I mean, Avi is not a conspiracy theorist like us. He's desperate to avoid being associated with the likes of us, but he has actually said as much. And indeed, the Angry Astronaut has just done a video about this. I know Angry, he's not a big fan of us. He's when it comes to the Apollo moon landings, but he is on our side, I think, when it comes to 3I Atlas, most significantly. So I'm do wonder if there's active disinformation from NASA.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? It does seem to be active.
I was going to say, Ben, like, what is the point of all the nonsense articles that just bring up rubbish about Atlas 3i?
I think there may be an intention to smear or distort.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean?
To kind of distract from the truth of it, what's really going on.
Yeah, I think that could be it. It's simply to make people. It makes us all look crazy, really. It makes us all look like loonies. Do you know what I mean?
The turd in the punch bowl theory.
Yes, exactly. And now they don't use this as often as some people will claim, because some people claim, well, they do this all the time. This is, the Mark Pilkington line, which is, well, they do this for everything, because they've got these secret aircraft, and therefore they put out loads and loads of stories about aliens interacting with us, because they want to keep the aircraft secret, you see. So they draw people's attention towards it. But they say it's aliens, and that'll keep their secret buried deeper. Now, I don't believe that myself. I think it's a kind of double bluff. But in some cases, they will. I mean, if the context is appropriate, they will do that. It's possible that's what they've done this time.
We've got a few more minutes left before the end of the show. So, where can people find out more about the Angry Astronaut and Avi Loeb, Ben, if they want to kind of see their official kind of? I know that the Angry Astronaut follows the work of Avi Loeb, and Angry Astronaut
Very much so, yeah.
and on YouTube, isn't he?
Yeah, Avi Loeb is medium.com/@Avi Loeb. It's AVI-LOEB. That is Avi's blog, and which is I say this is the actual place to go. It's the actual. This is really the. This is like the superstore of any information you want. Angry Astronaut, he's just called that, and he's on YouTube. His coverage of 3i Atlas has been extraordinarily good, even though his coverage of the moon landings has been very, very bad. So I tend to he tends to he puts his own spin on things. He tends to repeat a lot of what Avi says, but he puts his own commentary on that with some very, very technically well designed videos. So definitely, I'd say go to those.
Okay. And you watched the Age of Disclosure movie, have you? This documentary?
Yes, I have. It's worth watching. I'm glad. I mean, it's actually very expensive. It's extraordinarily expensive movie. It's like it's $14.49 to rent, and £18 pounds to buy on Amazon. And so I actually bought it. I think if you're going to pay that much, you might as well just buy the thing.
Right. We expect your VHS copies in the post soon, then.
I mean, how much? What I could say about it? I mean, it's worth watching. It's the information in it is not really terribly new, but it's presented in a way and for an audience that I think has never been before. I think it will raise the profile of this subject considerably. So, and I could say we could do an entire show about this particular movie. Really could.
I bet it pleases Stephen Greer no end.
Oh, he is very much against it. It's just. He's even calling it the age of deception, and he's calling for a boycott of this movie. The reasons for it, well, he thinks Elizondo's a shill, and etc. And he says that I think what basically bugs him is that now Disclosure's not all about him anymore. He's got to be the center of everything. He's the messianic, muscular Nordic hero who's going to take us into the new age. But now, of course, he has his own contribution to make, but he doesn't like to share the valor with anyone. I'll tell you, he doesn't like being just one of many people who are doing this. Whereas I personally don't care. I think the more the better.
So as the craft or comet, whatever you want to call it, leaves our solar system or crashes into Jupiter or goes into orbit around Jupiter, probably meets up with the monolith there from 2001.
Arthur C. Clarke. I mean, he wrote he wrote a book called Rendezvous with Rama, which is it's only now being adapted into a movie. Interestingly, it's never been adapted before. I read the book. It's a 1973 novel, which describes this very scenario.
Really? Oh, well, I was going to say we'll probably get some more because we've had 3 come through our solar system in the last 10 years. So, based upon that, surely you might get another one because we're getting better ways of detecting these things, and they could have been passing through us all the time, and we just kept missing them. And it's like the solar system's moving around on the arm of the great galaxy anyway. And so I suspect there's some big, massive cosmic explosion out there, and we're just picking up the debris from it 5 million years later or something.
Yeah. Well, funny, the very last line of Rendezvous with Rama at the end is it's a hint. It says the Ramans do everything in threes, indicating they're going to send more craft. This is very interesting. But we will probably detect more of these objects now. I mean, they haven't just started coming now. It's just we're seeing them because our telescopes have got so much better. The Vera C. Rubin Observatory in particular is incredibly sensitive for picking up objects in the near-Earth vicinity. And it's going to pick up more of these interstellar objects for certain. Some of them will be just like Borisov, ordinary. Others will be more interesting.
Okay, well,
It's a tool. It's a vital tool that we humans can use if to detect beings that would otherwise be invisible to us, possibly deliberately. It seems they've underestimated us, I would say.
Okay, we've got to bring the show to a wrap now, guys. So, Andy, do you want to plug your tuned in events quickly before we finish our recording?
Yeah, if people want to go Facebook or Instagram, tuned with a D, tuned in events, you can see what's going on and where we're doing it.
Okay, and then your Hipanwo sites.
Hospital Porters Against the New World Order. Just put that in, put HPANWO, and you'll find me. Please do check out my book, Roswell Rising, a Novel of Disclosure, which is about all the subjects we talk about in fictional form. You'll love that if you like this show. And that's available at all good bookshops now, price £10. So please stick around, learn more.
Cool. And I've got the book Modern Mysteries of the Unexplained out now for anyone that's interested. I'll put a link in the description, so check that out. Thanks very much indeed for joining us on the Paranormal Peep Show on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. I'm Neil Ward. You've been listening to Ben Emlyn-Jones and Andy Chaplin talking about 3i Atlas, the comet or the strange craft that's been passing through our solar system. Stay tuned for more, and we'll see you next month. Good night.
Take care.
Thank you.